WrestleMania 42 is officially in the history books. We shouldn't really be calling it WrestleMania 42. We should be calling it Celebrity Mania 42. Oh, nope, scratch that. We should actually call it Commercial Mania 42 because the amount of commercials that were on that show was insane. Like, I gotta be honest, man, the viewing experience for WrestleMania this year was just absolutely atrocious. The over-commercialization of WWE has literally ruined the viewing experience for the average consumer. And what's crazy is that it's not just wrestling fans that are complaining about this. Casual fans, the fans that TKO is actually trying to cater to, they are actually complaining about this as well. It's actually kind of hilarious if you really think about it. Night 2 was clearly better than Night 1. Night 2 had the better card. Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton made absolutely no sense, and Roman Reigns versus CM Punk was arguably one of the greatest main events in WrestleMania history. I don't care what anybody says. But I'm gonna be honest, man, WrestleMania 42 was not really one of the best WrestleManias in recent years. I mean, I wouldn't put this WrestleMania amongst my top 10, my top 20, or even my top 30 WrestleManias of all time. Like, the show itself was lackluster and it had a lot of flaws. Like, everything felt rushed. You know, WrestleMania was not good when there were more commercials than actual in-ring wrestling. And it's only going to be a glimpse as to what we are going to be seeing not only in the ESPN era, but also next year's WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah! Kurt Angle, yeah! Why, Triple H, you son of a tell me why! And Tony Khan, this is also on you!
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it!
WrestleMania 42 is officially in the history books. And I gotta say, there were a lot, and I mean a lot of mixed reactions based off of what transpired last weekend at WrestleMania. Of course, WrestleMania took place in Las Vegas, Nevada for the third time in its entire history, and of course, for the second consecutive year in a row. Man, what to say about WrestleMania 42, man. WrestleMania 42, am I going to rank it amongst one of the best WrestleManias of all time? No, I'm not. Am I going to rank it amongst my top 10? No. Am I going to rank it amongst my top 20? No. Hell, am I going to rank it amongst my top 30? Most likely not. Because I've seen much better WrestleManias in the past, and a lot better WrestleManias in recent years. Case in point, WrestleMania 39, WrestleMania 40, WrestleMania 31. You know, we've had a lot of great WrestleManias throughout the past couple of years. Hell, WrestleMania 38. WrestleMania 39, I believe Vince McMahon had some sort of say in WrestleMania 39. That was the one in Los Angeles, but really the last true Vince McMahon WrestleMania, which was WrestleMania 38. And I had a lot of criticisms on the build for that particular WrestleMania, and that WrestleMania ended up being a great WrestleMania. Of course, that was a WrestleMania in Dallas in which Cody Rhodes made his triumphant return to World Wrestling Entertainment, and the rest is history. But of course, we entered in the Triple H era. The build to WrestleMania 39 was off the chain. The build to WrestleMania 40, I mean, for God's sakes. The build to WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia was just pure chaos. It literally, like, pure chaos. Cody Rhodes wins the Royal Rumble. You think he's going to be facing Roman at WrestleMania, only to find out Roman's in the ring on a random SmackDown. Cody Rhodes comes out and he's like, I'm going to fight you for that title, but not at WrestleMania. And then everybody's jaw dropped. And then The Rock comes out and he immediately takes Cody's spot, and it led all the Cody crybabies, including myself, to go apeshit and revolt. And of course, WWE pivoted, and that led to the final boss. And literally, the build to WrestleMania 40 was one of the best builds to any WrestleMania in recent memory. Then we had WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas, and you can definitely start to see somewhat of a shift. There was an ongoing narrative going into that WrestleMania, and that was last year. There was an ongoing narrative, and of course, that narrative was this was going to be John Cena's last WrestleMania as a professional wrestler, as a performer, because of course, John Cena was in the midst of his retirement run, and he was going to go after Cody Rhodes, and of course, there was the heel turn at the Elimination Chamber, still one of the best moments in the modern era of WWE. But I will say the heel run of John Cena was absolutely atrocious. Clearly, WWE booked for the moment. They did not book for the long-term longevity of that said moment. They had no plan. And of course, we got the main event that we got at WrestleMania 42. I mean, we had the fantastic triple threat match between Punk, Roman, and Seth. Fantastic main event. A fantastic video package, of course, as well. But we had the John Cena and Cody Rhodes match that took place at WrestleMania, and it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. Now, me personally, the match itself was fine. I didn't consider it as like one of the worst WrestleMania main events of all time because I've seen worse, but I could understand why people call it that. But I will say Cody and John Cena redeemed themselves at SummerSlam. And then we come into this year's WrestleMania. This year's WrestleMania had no narrative whatsoever. What I mean, they had no main story going into this WrestleMania. Like WWE was literally scrambling throughout the past couple of months in what they wanted to do for WrestleMania this year. Number one, WrestleMania was originally meant to take place in New Orleans, Louisiana this year. They even had an announcement. They had The Rock come out and announce that WrestleMania 42 was going to take place in New Orleans, Louisiana at the Silver Dome. Oh, sorry, the Superdome. And within like a month and a half, they backed out of the deal because Las Vegas gave them more money. Again, people need to understand WrestleMania is a show that cities bid for. And Las Vegas, with the success that they had at WrestleMania 41, they wanted to have WrestleMania 42 once again. Everybody was speculating, oh my God, what if they have WrestleMania 42 in Saudi Arabia? Well, that wasn't the case. But don't get it twisted. We're still going to be getting WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia next year. Yes, we're going to be getting WrestleMania 43 in Saudi Arabia next year. This whole weekend was very interesting. A lot of things transpired this whole weekend. We're going to be talking about the majority of this very podcast. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania itself. We're going to be talking about both nights. We're also going to be talking about the viewing experience because I have a story to tell you guys on this very episode of the podcast. If you guys do not know now, I watched both shows, but I missed the entirety of night one live. And I will tell you why I missed the entirety of night one live. Like I ended up catching up on night one on Sunday, like around Sunday morning. But I missed the entirety of night one. And looking back, it's kind of a hilarious story. But I'm going to tell you my viewing experience because my viewing experience for WrestleMania was arguably, it was literally like, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And I know a lot of people had that same feeling when they were watching WrestleMania this year. But we're going to be talking about the show itself. We're going to be talking about the viewing experience. We're going to be talking about all the crazy incidents that happened in Las Vegas because there was a lot of incidents that took place outside of Allegiant Stadium in many different areas in Las Vegas involving wrestlers and fans. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the CM Punk incident that took place, the story that TMZ put out about CM Punk, and I'm going to give you my opinion on it because I know there's been a lot of opinions on that matter. People have been very opinionated on that whole CM Punk matter. So I'm going to be talking about that as well. Mark Shapiro claims that TKO has full creative control over WWE. You don't say. You don't believe me? Watch the Randy Orton and Pat McAfee angle. WWE, of course, denied the ESPN journalist. They denied him credentials to Andreas Hale because, of course, he gave them a C+ grade for WrestlePalooza. Yeah, they didn't give him credentials for this WrestleMania, so we're going to be talking about that as well. Plus, we're going to be talking about a little bit of AEW. Of course, we're going to be talking about the big win last Wednesday on Dynamite with Darby Allin beating MJF for the AEW World title at Dynamite this past Wednesday. And I'm going to tell you guys why it was the wrong move to make. So we got a lot of things to talk about right here on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast on this Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. Before I get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, if you guys are watching this podcast on WNN platforms, whether or not it's on the WNN Facebook page or on the WNN YouTube channel, I thank you guys very much for watching me on those platforms as well. Also, I've been making uploads on the main WrestleHavoc channel, so if you guys haven't checked out any of the recent videos of on the main WrestleHavoc channel, please very well check those videos out. The links will be in the description below. Not only that, the link to the main channel will be in the description below. But without any further ado, let's get straight into talking about WrestleMania 42, or as I like to call it, Celebrity Mania 42. No, scratch it. Let's not call it Celebrity Mania 42. Let's call it Commercial Mania 42, because that's exactly what we got for the majority of WrestleMania this year. We got nothing but commercials. Commercial this, commercials that. Like, everything about this year's WrestleMania was commercials. And we're going to be going a little bit more in depth about it, but again, the viewing experience for WrestleMania was absolutely atrocious. Now, before I talk about my viewing experience, I got to tell you guys a crazy story that happened on Saturday. So, as you guys all know, and I've constantly mentioned on this very podcast, that for the WWE PLEs, I don't pay for ESPN. I don't pay the $30 for ESPN. I essentially just I have a Netflix account, and I just use a VPN because it's just much easier for me to use a VPN, and it's much cheaper. That's why VPNs exist, to make your lives easier. Well, instead of making my life easier, it actually made my life harder on Saturday night. I actually missed the entirety. Think about this. I missed the entirety of night one. Now, granted, I caught up to speed with night one because I basically opened up a new email and I basically made a Hulu account with the bundle of ESPN Unlimited. But that's how I ended up watching WrestleMania. I ended up canceling my subscription after that. But I had a VPN, and I used a really good VPN. I use ExpressVPN, and I had a Netflix account. Now, how I might add missed the entirety of WrestleMania 41. Like, how did I miss the entirety of WrestleMania 42? Sorry, not 41, 42. Well, Netflix, and this is not really a WWE issue. This is really a Netflix issue. And on one hand, I kind of understand why they do it nowadays, now, because, you know, they would want to take security measures, and like, I understand everybody's using that VPN all at once. I totally understand it. And look, it's WrestleMania, so you know everybody's busting out the VPN for this. Netflix was essentially blocking my VPN. Like, I would change VPNs to like different countries just to watch WrestleMania on Netflix. And every single country and every single VPN that I would use on ExpressVPN, Netflix blocked it. Netflix blocked it. I spent like 3 hours trying to fix that whole issue, but there was no fixing in that issue. And I know a lot of other people had that same problem when they were watching WrestleMania. I ended up missing the entirety of the first night of WrestleMania. And I'm going to say this right here and right now. I was crashing out like crazy on Saturday. Looking back, it's kind of embarrassing. But I crashed out like crazy. It was insane. It was insane because even though I wasn't as excited about this year's WrestleMania, it was still WrestleMania, and I always watch WrestleMania whether or not I am interested in it or not, because again, it's the biggest wrestling show of the year. It's the biggest wrestling show of the year, but I'm not going to lie, man, I was crashing out like crazy. I was mad. I was very, very, very upset. Very upset. To the point where I just basically gave up on life, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give up and just figure out a way. How am I going to figure out a certain way as to how am I going to fix the situation? And basically, like, right after the show ended, like, I ended up making a whole new email, making a whole new ESPN Unlimited account, and just getting the free trial from Hulu, and then watching WrestleMania via that account. I ended up canceling the subscription before the free trial expired, but still, this is my opinion on the viewing experience of WrestleMania. And I know I was going to cover this later, but we kind of just, drove right into the topic. My viewing experience in terms of WrestleMania, especially with the first night, was horrible. Again, I missed the entire first night live, but when I caught up on the first night of WrestleMania, I understand why a lot of people were upset. The majority of the entire show was just commercials after commercials after commercials after commercials after commercials. It was insane. And this is really it's not only just a WWE thing. It's not only just a TKO thing. It's also an ESPN thing as well. People need to understand that ESPN overpaid like crazy for the WWE PLEs. Only for the PLEs. They didn't get the catalog. They didn't get nothing. They just got the PLEs. They overpaid like crazy, and there's been a lot of stories going on about ESPN having buyer's remorse over WWE. And it definitely clearly showed. Like, there were constant commercials, and these commercials were long. I mean, like, they were really long. Like, right after the match, like right after a match was over, like, they went straight to commercial break. Like, they'd have a couple of commercials, and then they'd show the WrestleMania logo, and it says, "We'll be right back after this commercial break." And you'd wait like 4 minutes with just that screen showing. Like, it was a horrible, horrible, horrible viewing experience. And it dwelled into night two. Now, granted, it wasn't as bad in night two, but it was still relatively bad. It was 10 times worse when you were watching night one. But one thing I will say about this year's WrestleMania, and look, I will say this, night two was 10 times better than night one. And you can tell WWE definitely got the feedback from the fan reaction after watching night one. They kind of toned it down a bit when it came to the commercials on night two. It was still relatively insane. And I understand, look, you got to make money in some way, shape, or form. At the end of the day, this is a business. You got to make money. It's all about money to these people. We live in a capitalistic society. That's how it is. People don't understand that, but that's the truth. But there's a certain way that you can make money without affecting the viewing experience for your average consumer. You know what I'm saying? I think what we saw on night one at WrestleMania was just absolutely atrocious. It was atrocious. Not only that, WWE was literally rushing through the entire card on both nights. They were rushing through the entire card. If anything, there was more commercial time than there was actual in-ring action on both nights of WrestleMania. Keep in mind, WrestleMania used to be a pay-per-view. It used to be a pay-per-view up until the launch of the WWE Network in 2014. And even with the launch of the WWE Network in 2014, they still treated it like a pay-per-view because, again, it was WWE's, own streaming service. Literally. We took the WWE Network for granted. We really did take the WWE Network for granted. And then, of course, they sold the WWE Network over to Peacock. And to a lot of people, that was a downgrade because the streaming model of the WWE Network was just like literally unparalleled, and Peacock essentially ruined it. But in terms of WWE, I could understand as to why they sold the WWE Network rights to Peacock, because I believe at the time, right around 2021, like the WWE Network only had roughly around 1 million viewers. And if you compare that to like a Netflix or a Peacock or even an HBO Max, like it's like night and day. Like, the WWE Network was essentially for a niche audience. The only reason as to why people subscribed to the WWE Network at the time was for the pay-per-views and for NXT and the takeovers. That's it. Once NXT moved to the USA Network back in 2019, it was only the pay-per-views and the takeovers. That's it. But in terms of like, the Peacock era, like, it was still like the viewing experience was not bad. The viewing experience was not bad on Peacock. It was not as bad as it is on ESPN. The viewing experience on ESPN is just absolutely atrocious. Commercial after commercial after commercial, like, it's unbearable. It's literally unbearable to watch. It's unbearable to watch. And look, this is more of like an ESPN thing, but at the same time, TKO has a part to blame in this as well, because they were the ones that signed the deal with ESPN. And we all know how much they love the, over commercializing their products. I mean, look at the UFC. Look at the amount of sponsors that are on the mat of the octagon. It's insane. Like, sponsors were always on the mat of the octagon for years. For years. Like, ever since Zuffa bought the company in 2001, there were always sponsors on the octagon, but never to this extent. A lot of people always say UFC pushes degeneracy. Like, I've seen a meme on Instagram about how, like, the UFC, like, pushes their sponsors, and the majority of their sponsors are essentially gambling sites. Because that's exactly what it is. On the WWE side, it's basically the same thing. They're putting, sponsors on the ring mat, which personally I do not mind. Like, listen, the idea of putting sponsors on the ring mat is nothing new. If anything, I'm actually an advocate of that. I've always been advocating, hey, you should add sponsors on the ring mat. Everybody's like, oh, but the mat is sacred. Vince McMahon always had the philosophy of the mat being sacred. Well, WCW did it in the 1990s. New Japan, if you are a watcher of New Japan and you complain about the fact that WWE has sponsors on the ring mat, you are a hypocrite, because New Japan has always had sponsors on the ring mat for decades. For decades. For decades, they've always had sponsors on the ring mat. Sponsors on the ring mat, I have absolutely no problem with. Hell, AEW does it at some points as well. Remember when they had DraftKings on the ring mat? Like, I have no problem with sponsors on the ring mat. I really don't. Boxing has done it for decades. Look at boxing. Boxing has always had sponsors on the ring mat. But when you have sponsors, when you sponsor tables, and when you sponsor things that really do not need to be sponsored, that's when I have a problem. Like, the fact that you got ladders that are sponsored by, like, Slim Jim, or tables that are sponsored by Slim Jim, or Dude Wipes like, seriously, WWE has a sponsorship with Dude Wipes. It's insane. They got a sponsorship with Dude Wipes. It's crazy. When you over commercialize, like, even the smallest things, that's when I have a problem, because again, it affects the viewing experience of your average consumer. Again, I understand that you need to make money. This is a business, and and a lot of fans, unfortunately, do not understand that. But again, there is a certain way to make that money where it doesn't affect the viewing experience of, again, your average consumer. TKO clearly does not understand that. And that's why a lot of people view TKO as, in a sense, the enemy, or really the evil force behind WWE now. I see a lot of people advocating for the return of Vince McMahon. You guys are the stupidest idiots that I've ever heard in my life. You guys are the stupidest bunch of people on the wrestling space if you honestly believe Vince McMahon should be, should return. If you believe Vince McMahon should return, you are the problem. Vince McMahon ran the WWE creatively in the ground before Triple H took it over. People need to understand, like, 2019 WWE, like, we were literally in the trenches, bro. It was the worst bits of not only wrestling television, it was one of the worst bits of television, period. Like, I felt embarrassed being a wrestling fan. Like, if I had somebody walk in the room and I was watching a Raw in 2019, like, people would laugh at me. If it wasn't for AEW, let's be real, if it wasn't for AEW, I probably wouldn't be a fan right now. But in terms of people wanting Vince McMahon back, people need to understand Vince McMahon was literally the one that sold the company to Endeavor to begin with. And he's doing just fine. He's still a workaholic, but he's doing just fine financially. Now, granted, the whole Janelle Grant thing is another thing, but that's another story for another time. The point I'm trying to get across is that WrestleMania does not feel like WrestleMania. It did not feel like WrestleMania at all this year. Hell, it didn't even feel like WrestleMania last year. The last time WrestleMania really felt like WrestleMania. And look, even in those last few years of under the Vince McMahon administration, I actually said the same thing. Like, WrestleMania just does not feel like WrestleMania. Like, if you look at WrestleMania, 37, no, it was not a bad WrestleMania, but again, it just didn't feel like WrestleMania. WrestleMania 38, I was like, okay, this definitely feels like WrestleMania. Then we headed to WrestleMania 39 and WrestleMania 40. Those two WrestleManias were like the embodiment of WrestleMania and what WrestleMania is all about. Those two WrestleManias, especially 39, like, as much as everybody loves WrestleMania 40, they only love it for the Cody and Roman thing, and I understand. And maybe the Sami Zayn and Gunther match, which was an amazing match, but I actually enjoyed as a show as a whole, I actually enjoyed 39 more than I did 40. Like, those two WrestleManias, 39 and 40, were the embodiment of what WrestleMania is all about. You look at 41 and this year's WrestleMania, or this past weekend's WrestleMania, it goes to show you what TKO really thinks about WrestleMania. They don't view WrestleMania as the biggest show of the year anymore. At least in my sense. They will tell you that it's the biggest show of the year, but they don't treat it as the biggest show of the year. They treat it as just another show. They treat it just as another show. That's what they think about WrestleMania. They will not tell you that outright, but that's what they think. Again, WrestleMania just did not feel like WrestleMania. Was WrestleMania as a whole, was WrestleMania 42 this year a horrible, horrible, horrible WrestleMania? Was it like WrestleMania 27 or WrestleMania, WrestleMania 34 or WrestleMania 11 types of bad? No. But would I put it amongst my top 10, top 20, or even top 30 WrestleManias? Absolutely not. Both WrestleManias, last year's and this year's, the ones in Las Vegas, were not the best WrestleManias, man. And clearly WWE did not learn their lesson from last year. Now, that being said, how was the card? Well, again, night one, a lot of people did not like night one, and I could definitely understand it. Night one was not really the best show possible. Well, could I say it was the worst show ever? No. But I'm not going to say it was good either. Night one was not really the best show. Normally, especially in recent years, in terms of the 2-night format of WrestleMania, we always tend to compare both nights, and 9 times out of 10, the first night is not going to be better than the second night. It just isn't. Like, it was the same thing last year. Like, last year, night one was not a good show last year, but the main event of night one was fantastic. Then we had an amazing night two, but then the main event of night two was kind of a train wreck. This year, in a sense, almost the entirety of night one was just not good at all, especially the main event. The main event made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And then we had night two, which, yeah, it still had the same commercial problems that a lot of people had with night one. But if you look at the night two card, clearly night two was a much better card than night one. And it showed. We had Brock Lesnar versus Obafemi. We had the IC title. Ladder match. We had Jade Cargill versus Rhea Ripley. We had the Demon versus Dominic Mysterio. And of course, we had one of the best WrestleManias in main events in recent memory in CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. And I will talk about that match later on, man. Those two guys tore the freaking house down. They tore the freaking house down. It was one of the best WrestleManias one of the best WrestleMania main events in recent years. Again, one of the best main events ever, man. They like literally, Roman Reigns and CM Punk proved that you do not need constant interference in a main event to make it a good main event. We have been so accustomed to constant interference, like, it's crazy. But again, I will go more in depth about Roman and Punk later on this very show as I go through the card. Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes made absolutely no sense. But again, in terms of WrestleMania this year, I wouldn't rank WrestleMania this year as one of the best WrestleManias of all time. And I talked about this back at the Royal Rumble when they were in Saudi Arabia, and I'm going to say it again. Watching the Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia and watching this year's WrestleMania in Las Vegas, it's only going to give us a glimpse as to it's literally going to give us a glimpse as to what we're going to see with WWE PLEs for the duration of this ESPN deal and what we are going to be seeing. It's going to give us a glimpse as to what we are also going to be seeing next year at WrestleMania, since WrestleMania is going to be going to Saudi Arabia. It's going to, I don't know, man. WrestleMania going to Saudi Arabia seemed like, imagine telling somebody that in 2018. Oh yeah. Also in 9 years, in around 8 to 9 years, we're going to be getting WrestleMania, an actual WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia. Think about that. We're getting Saudi Mania next year. It's going to be sad as hell. It's going to be sad as hell. And that begs the question, what are these independent promotions going to be doing? What are all these independent promotions going to be, what are they all going to be doing that weekend for WrestleMania? Because clearly they're going to lose a lot of money because they are not going to be traveling to Saudi Arabia to do all these indie shows. They're not. WWE is going to dominate Saudi Arabia, and it's only going to be WWE, nobody else. You know, like WrestleMania is a show where literally the entire wrestling world comes together for this whole weekend. You know, you got a lot of independent promotions like the GCWs of the world, like hosting, you know, they host the Collective, Joe Janela's Spring Break, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, which apparently Bloodsport is no longer going to be a thing anymore. Josh Barnett, I believe, shut it down. He made that shocking announcement, and I did watch his interview with Ari Hawani, but literally the entire weekend revolves around, you know, the entire wrestling world coming together, not only for just WrestleMania, but all the other festivities going on. A lot of other, you know, independent promotions, a lot of conventions. Like, we're not going to be getting that next year. So what the hell is going to be happening, you know, next year? Like, is somebody going to do a big show? Is AEW going to do a show? Like, I have no idea, but it's interesting, man. But again, in terms of you know, WrestleMania, again, WrestleMania was not one of the best shows, and it's only going to give us a glimpse as to what we are going to be seeing in this ESPN era in terms of the PLEs, and also in terms of what we are going to be seeing next year at WrestleMania. Again, you're essentially getting, you know, they fancy, you know, they want you to pay these $30 for a product that seems quote unquote premium. Yet everything that you see just does not feel premium at all. It just does not feel premium at all. If you want to talk about greed, talk about TKO, man. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Now, let's talk about WrestleMania 42. Let's talk about the card itself. Again, night one was not the best show. Again, was it the worst show in the world? No, but by all means, it was not a good show either. But we had a 6-man tag team match. We had the Usos and LA Knight defeating Logan Paul, Austin Theory, and I Show Speed. I Show Speed was in this. Again, I couldn't really be that interested. But, you know, I Show Speed eventually got his moment after he essentially let the babyfaces win. And then, of course, Logan Paul and Austin Theory got pissed at I Show Speed, and I Show Speed ended up beating them all up, along with the Usos and LA Knight. We had the unsanctioned match between Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre. Jacob Fatu ended up getting the win. Again, this unsanctioned match, you know, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a street fight between Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that is the case. Last year at WrestleMania. I didn't watch WrestleMania back last year. Like, literally last year's WrestleMania, I watched it live and then I don't watch it again. That's really, aside from like the triple threat match, but everything else I just couldn't care about. But I believe there was a street fight between Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest. Correct me if I'm wrong. Last year at WrestleMania. In this case, like, it was an unsanctioned match, but it really didn't feel like an unsanctioned match. Like, it went by super quick. But Jacob Fatu ended up getting the win. We got the women's tag team titles on the line in a fatal 4-way match. We had the Bella Twins, or Brie Bella, and a returning Paige. Yes, Paige made a return to WWE to replace Nikki Bella after she suffered an injury. So that was a great moment to see. Brie Bella and Paige defeated Nia Jax and Lash Legend, who were the current champions at the time, Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, and Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. So it's great to see Paige back. Do I think WWE is really going to do a lot with Paige? I honestly don't believe so, but hey, man, she came back and now she's a champion once again. So think about this. In her debut on the main roster all the way back in 2014, she defeated AJ Lee to win the Divas title. And in her return to WWE, she essentially wins the tag team titles with Brie Bella. So that is great to see. We got the women's IC title on the line as AJ Lee defended her title against Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch, of course, ended up getting the win. It was not a bad match whatsoever, but again, it went by super quickly. Really, the best match of night one, in my opinion, was Gunther versus Seth Rollins. You know, again, it was another one of those matches that went by quick, but at the same time, you know, with the amount of time that Gunther and Seth Rollins had, they went straight into the action, and it was essentially TNA. It was total nonstop action, no pun intended. But it was a fantastic match. I mean, you know, Gunther, man. Gunther is, you know, my sisters started watching wrestling ever since WWE started getting hot throughout the last couple of years. And I always told them, man, Gunther is so entertaining to watch, and they hate the fact that I enjoy Gunther matches. But they're like, they're like, again, any Gunther match that you can watch, any Walter/Gunther match that you can watch, man, it's just fun. Like, they're fun to watch. Like, Gunther, of course, is an intimidating figure. But the sense that I get every time when I watch a Gunther match is just fun, and I get that fun out of watching just the pure chaos that goes on with Gunther. Like, Gunther is just pure chaos whenever you see him in the ring with anybody. And he definitely showed that with Seth Rollins. This was easily the best match of night one of WrestleMania. So, Gunther defeated Seth Rollins. Liv Morgan defeated Stephanie Vaquer, and she wins once again the Women's World Championship. Liv Morgan, this match was not really the best. Again, I believe this match was like 6 minutes. Think about that. Your Women's World Title match was like 6 minutes, and that alone embodies the biggest problem with this WrestleMania. A lot of these matches were less than 10 minutes, either 10 minutes, slightly more than 10 minutes, or less than 10 minutes. Aside from the main events. Everything else on the undercard was just rushed. WWE literally rushed through all of these undercard matches. Now, granted, I wasn't as interested in these undercard matches, but still, it just sounds bad when you think about it. They didn't give both of these women enough time. Let's be honest with ourselves. We had Bianca Belair return, and of course, she's been out for a while. She actually announced her pregnancy. She's currently pregnant, and that's one of the reasons as to why she's out. And look, congratulations to Bianca Belair, and it's great to see. And then we had the undisputed WWE title match. We had Cody Rhodes taking on Randy Orton for the WWE title. From the moment this match was announced, of course, you know, I've said, like, it's the right move for Cody to go up against Randy because, again, the story is there. I thought the Randy Orton heel turn was brilliantly done. It was brilliantly done. Everything about the heel turn was just perfect in terms of Randy Orton. The only problem that WWE faced, and this is before Pat McAfee came into the picture, the biggest problem that WWE faced in terms of this whole build between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton is, number one, Cody Rhodes is starting to get that mixed reaction with the audience. He is. As much as he is a true babyface, and Cody Rhodes is a true babyface, he is getting that mixed reaction. And look, every year during WrestleMania, especially in markets like Las Vegas, especially after WrestleMania 40, in which, of course, that was literally like the peak of Cody Rhodes, in my opinion, fans are going to start revolting after the babyface is on top for a certain amount of time. And if you watched the Cody and John Cena match last year, you know what I'm talking about. Cody Rhodes definitely got that mixed reaction because clearly every year during WrestleMania, it's always Bizarro Land. It's always, for like, everybody used to call Montreal Bizarro Land because of the Montreal Screwjob, but let's be real with ourselves now. Every year during WrestleMania, it's always Bizarro Land because the crowds are going to favor certain people and they're not going to favor other people. And 9 times out of 10, they are not going to favor the baby faces. They are going to favor the heels. And John Cena came in to WrestleMania last year as the heel, and Cody came in as the babyface. And even though John Cena was a heel, they were still cheering for John Cena, and they were booing Cody Rhodes. Even after all the Pat McAfee crap and Randy Orton being a heel, fans were still cheering for Randy Orton, and they didn't really care a lot about Cody Rhodes. Again, Cody Rhodes is starting to get that mixed reaction with the audience. And it's not just happening at WrestleMania, it's happening in any other show that he is a part of. Do I think he should still be a babyface? Yes, he should. But, at a certain point, I think we need to start talking about a potential heel turn with Cody Rhodes. I'm not saying turn him heel now because it wouldn't make any sense at all. I'm just saying think about it. But then they added Pat McAfee in this build, and you guys know my take on this. I thought the addition of Pat McAfee was just absolutely atrocious. I think it was one of the stupidest decisions WWE has made in recent memory. And to be honest, it really wasn't a Triple H or / Paul Levesque move. This was strictly a Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro, TKO Endeavor move. It was a WME-IMG move. That's what it was. That is exactly what this was. Ari Emanuel clearly, if you guys do not know, and y'all should know, Endeavor owns TKO. And Endeavor is a talent agency, WME-IMG. Of course, Ari Emanuel Endeavor represents Pat McAfee, and there's been stories coming out that Ari Emanuel views Pat McAfee as the next Sylvester Stallone. I'm going to say this right here and right now. I like Pat McAfee, by the way. I like Pat McAfee. I think his entire run in WWE dating back to his days in NXT were fantastic. I loved his commentary with Michael Cole. Of course, Michael Cole did play-by-play, and of course, Pat McAfee did color. But I've always loved the dynamic between Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. And I remember a lot of people last year complaining about the Pat McAfee and Gunther match that took place, I believe, at Backlash. But in my opinion, even though on paper, like, that match sounded really stupid, and to be fair, it really did sound stupid. Like, the match itself, when you watch it, like, kind of embodies like the connection that Pat McAfee has with somebody like Michael Cole. And I really love their dynamic. Turning Pat McAfee heel and joining Randy Orton made absolutely, and I mean absolutely, no sense whatsoever. It's literally one of the stupidest decisions I've ever seen WWE pull. And think about this. WWE has been teasing this mystery caller for weeks at that point. And everybody expected it to be like The Rock, or everybody expected it to be like, Ted DiBiase Jr., since he was recently acquitted of all of his criminal charges, which, by the way, Ted DiBiase Jr. was in attendance at WrestleMania in Las Vegas. So that's kind of hilarious. And Randy Orton even said, like, he owes me $25,000. So funny. But in terms of the whole Pat McAfee heel turn, like, it made no sense. A lot of his promos were cringe as a heel. Like, he was talking about how, why isn't WrestleMania sold out? WrestleMania should be sold out. You wonder why ticket prices are so expensive. Like, they're literally mentioning all of this negative press on their television program. And they have that philosophy that any types of press is good press. Like, they don't care whether it's good or bad. Like, press is press. And to me, when I heard Pat McAfee talk about the ticket prices and talk about how WrestleMania is not sold out yet, and CM Punk going on a pipe bomb saying, lower ticket prices, it is literally like that is something that came straight out of WCW. Literally something that came straight out of WCW. So, like, literally, you lost me with the whole Pat McAfee thing when it came to the build between Randy and Cody, because at the end of the day, it did not become about, like, it went from being about Cody and Randy to being Cody versus Pat McAfee. Randy Orton essentially took a back seat in this whole entire build. And I hate to say that because, again, there was literally a story that you could have told, and you could have sold people in a Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton match, but instead you had to add your celebrity influence on there. And this is another point that I really want to get across. The WWE you knew from years past is dead. The WWE you knew from years past is dead. Look no further than this match between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. It's involving Jelly Roll, and it's involving Pat McAfee. WWE has become a place and a hub, essentially. It's become a hub where a lot of celebrities and a lot of influencers can just hang out. They don't have to be wrestling fans. And I was talking to Ariel Helwani. I was not talking to Ariel. I was listening, talking to Ariel Helwani. I wish I could talk to Ariel Helwani. Ariel Helwani, I would love to be on your show. Please. You're probably not going to hear this, but I would love to be on your show. But I was listening to Ariel Helwani, and he was talking about how WrestleMania was soulless, and I wholeheartedly agree with what he was saying. He was also saying that essentially, you know, WWE caters a lot to the casual fans. And look, from my point of view, I think it's smart for WWE, and they've always done this. They've always catered to the mainstream. Ever since the 1980s, they always try to cater to the mainstream, and they try to cater to the casuals. But when you have non-wrestling fans that watch ESPN trash WrestleMania, you got a problem. Not only that, Ariel Helwani was also talking about how, you know, TKO essentially wants, you know, these casuals to become hardcores, and then the current hardcores would educate essentially the casuals that want to become the hardcores about how bad TKO is. And I totally understand where he was coming from, and I totally understand his point of view. One thing I will say is that I understand you trying to garner mainstream appeal. It's a smart business tactic. I think AEW should do more of that. But at the same time, the problem with WWE doing it is the fact that they do a little bit too much of it. There's nothing wrong with having influencers or celebrity involvement. But the fact that you have it on a constant basis on your product every single week, and you have that be the focal point of your host show, that's where you lose your core fan base. And I feel like WWE, even though they cater less to the hardcores, let's be honest, again, they cater more towards the casuals than they do the hardcores. And to be fair, the hardcores, the hardcore fan is arguably a small portion of the wrestling fan. Let's be honest with ourselves. That's just a cold hard truth. The hardcore fan is a small portion. I don't think you should abandon those fans, though. Like, as much as I say, like, hardcore fans are a small minority, I don't think you should abandon them either. You should not abandon them, and I feel like WWE is essentially abandoning them. They are essentially abandoning the hardcore audience, and they are basically, you know, making WWE into this hub where you see constant aura farming, and you see a bunch of these, you know, IRL streamers, influencers, all that crap. It's kind of sad, honestly. It is kind of sad. But in terms of the Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton match, the match itself, in my opinion, made absolutely no sense. Like, I did not enjoy this match. Now, I take that back. If you were to exclude Pat McAfee in this, the match would have been perfect. Because Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton are capable of having a fantastic match. And they did, like, if you exclude Pat McAfee, this match was fantastic. But at the same time, from a storytelling standpoint, like when they brought in Pat McAfee and they had Randy Orton RKO Pat McAfee, I'm looking at this and I'm like, what if you have Randy Orton turn on Pat McAfee? What was the entire point of Randy Orton joining Pat McAfee? Like, it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Then you had Cody Rhodes go over. You had Cody Rhodes go over, retain his title, and then you had Randy Orton attack Cody Rhodes. Now, on one hand, I kind of dig it because we're at least going to be getting a normal Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes feud that is not involving Jelly Roll or Pat McAfee. Actually, take that back, because the rumored main event for Backlash is going to be a fucking tag team match between Cody and Jelly Roll taking on Randy Orton and Pat McAfee. It's probably not going to be the case now, especially after what we saw at WrestleMania with Randy Orton turning on Pat McAfee or hitting the RKO on Pat McAfee, but I digress. But still, in terms of like the decisions that WWE made in terms of, like, you know, having Randy Orton RKO Pat McAfee and like him having attacked Cody Rhodes after the match, like it just made no sense whatsoever. And it made me question WWE's decision as to why they involved Pat McAfee in this to begin with. Why are you going to pair Pat McAfee with Randy Orton if you're only going to have Randy Orton turn on Pat McAfee? It just makes absolutely no sense. The only thing that I could say about that is essentially it was probably damage control on WWE's end, because they saw all of the backlash that the Pat McAfee and Randy Orton pairing got. They got all the backlash. They received the entire. They got all the backlash from the fan base, and they were like, okay, let's just undo it. That's the only reason as to that's my theory as to why that took place. That's just my theory. But again, Cody and Randy was not a bad match, but the fact that it involved Pat McAfee and the way that they utilized Pat McAfee in this just absolutely made no sense. Again, it was not the best main event, if you really want to take things into consideration. So that was WrestleMania Night 1. Night 2, on the other hand, was a very good show. I really enjoyed Night 2, and if you were to compare both Night 2 and Night 1, clearly Night 2 was the better card, and Night 2 definitely just knocked it out of the park. Almost every single match was just fantastic. Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. One of the matches that I was actually really looking forward to for WrestleMania. Number one, Obafemi is on a freaking tear. I mean, the amount, the popularity that Obafemi is garnering is insane. Like the popularity of Obafemi is absolutely insane. He deserves all that popularity, man, because Obafemi is the man. He is a future world champion. And I'm going to go as far as to say, and if really WWE books their cards right, and if WWE plays their cards right, we could be seeing Obafemi win a world championship this year. That's a bold prediction for me to make. It's a bold prediction for me to make, but man, I just view it like that. Like we are possibly on the verge of seeing Obafemi win a world championship this year. Who knows? Depending on what they do with Roman Reigns is going to hold on to that world heavyweight title for a long period of time. He is. He's going to hold on to that world title for a hot minute. But still, I genuinely believe Obafemi is going to win a world title. I do think he will win a world title, or maybe an Intercontinental title. I don't know. Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. Keep in mind, this the first hour of WrestleMania took place on ESPN Linear. And, of course, they want to start it off with a bang. We got Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. That match went by so quick. Obafemi, I don't want to say squashed Brock Lesnar, but he basically dominated almost the majority of the match. And he ended up getting the win that quickly. But the story of this match was not really the outcome. It was what happened after. Brock Lesnar, after the match, took off his gloves, took off his boots, and placed them in the center of the ring. Essentially telling everybody that he is retiring from professional wrestling. Now, it is no secret that everybody was talking about Brock Lesnar and when he's going to retire. A lot of people were saying he was going to be retiring this year. And a lot of people were saying that his last match is most likely going to be at SummerSlam in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is essentially, which is Brock Lesnar's hometown. But now what we saw at WrestleMania, could the Obafemi match be Brock Lesnar's last match? I genuinely think it was. But who knows? Like, there was no formal announcement saying that Brock Lesnar was going to retire. I mean, he did place his gloves and his boots in the center of the ring. I mean, Undertaker did the same thing at WrestleMania 33, and we still got more matches out of The Undertaker. You know, we got more we got more out of The Undertaker after WrestleMania 33. You know, who knows? Even Paul Heyman on TMZ was like, you know, I didn't say like he was retired. But still, it looked like he was done. It looked like he was done. And say what you want about Brock Lesnar, man, but if he truly is done, man, we are really on the verge of the end of an era. We got John Cena retiring. We got AJ Styles retiring. Now we got Brock Lesnar retiring. It's crazy, man. It's crazy how time flies. It's crazy how time flies, man. It's insane. But in terms of Brock Lesnar, you know, in terms of Brock Lesnar retiring, I don't know if this was his last match. Again, SummerSlam is going to be taking place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And clearly, you know, with the way that they're booking Gunther, I would love to see a Gunther versus Brock Lesnar match. I don't think we have gotten that yet. But I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But from what it looks like, man, Brock Lesnar is, for the time being, is done. And man, again, it's crazy. Like, think about this, man. Brock Lesnar, he had 2 runs with the WWE. His first run was in 2002 all the way to 2004. He leaves. He was tangled in all this legal lingo with WWE, with WWE not allowing him to work other wrestling promotions, but he basically breached that and ended up working for New Japan. And then, of course, did his thing in MMA, became, you know, one of the top draws of the UFC before Ronda, before Conor. And then, of course, returns to WWE in 2012 and basically just dominates the entire scene. Now, at first, it was kind of, you know, a little iffy. You know, WWE was kind of struggling as to who they were going to pair Brock Lesnar with, because this was before Paul Heyman made a return to the company in 2012. Like, they at one point paired him with like John, like it was ridiculous. And then they brought in Paul Heyman, and then everything was perfect. And then, of course, 2014 was where he really dominated. He ended the Undertaker's undefeated streak. He dominated John Cena at SummerSlam 2014 and won the world title, and had that crazy run with the world title. He was a part-time champion. But looking back, a lot of people say, like, damn, that was actually not a bad title run. And then, of course, he dropped it at WrestleMania 30. Like, you know, Brock Lesnar is, you know, was one, in my opinion, during that period of time, one of the best acts on WWE TV. And then it started to get a little bit tiring as, like, you know, he became Universal Champion. And he was, like, champion for what was it, a year and a half, 2 years? I don't even remember. But, man, a lot of people were complaining about Brock Lesnar being that champion. It was crazy. But in terms of Brock Lesnar retiring, man, it's the end of an era. It's the end of an era. Penta defeated Javon Evans, Dragon Lee, JD McDonough, Rusev, and Rey Mysterio to retain the Intercontinental title in a fantastic ladder match for the U.S. title. We had the U.S. title match. We had Sami Zayn taking on Trick Williams, and Trick Williams ended up getting the win. Again, you know, you talk about Obafemi, but we also got to talk about Trick Williams. Whoop that Trick, man. Again, Trick Williams is really becoming one of the most popular acts on WWE TV as well, man. Trick Williams, you know, the whoop that Trick chants is, you know, they're super loud. And they were loud, you know, back when he was in NXT. But, man, when he got called up to the main roster, it was like on another level. It was on another level. But Trick Williams is your new U.S. champion. The Demon, Finn Balor, defeated Dominic Mysterio in a pretty good street fight. We had John Cena, of course, announcing the attendance record, and Danhausen, you know, took down The Miz and Kit Wilson, which, honestly, I was watching that with my mom, and my mom felt embarrassed. Like, I ain't gonna lie. That was hilarious. And then we had the World Heavyweight title match between Roman Reigns and CM Punk. Okay. This match, man. This match. I don't care what anybody says. Roman Reigns versus CM Punk will go down. In my opinion, I don't care what anybody says. Will go down as one of the greatest WrestleMania main events in recent memory. Not only that, one of the greatest WrestleMania main events of all time. I'm being dead serious. This match was off the freaking chain. everything about, I mean, the build up to Roman Reigns versus CM Punk was fantastic. Like, you can definitely see WWE implementing a lot of reality based storytelling into the build with Roman Reigns and CM Punk. The back and forth segments that we've been getting on Raw, of course, some of the interviews that CM Punk has been having, some of the interviews that Roman Reigns has been having, and trust me, like that promo that he cut when he was in that car, when Roman Reigns was in that SUV and he was cutting that promo, man, he went off on CM Punk. WWE definitely implemented a lot of reality-based storytelling into this match. And I do believe there is some real-life animosity between CM Punk and Roman Reigns. I do believe that there is a lot of... There is some real-life animosity between the two. Because if you really think about it, CM Punk and Roman Reigns, they are polar opposites. They are. And that was really one of the main, stories about this match. I mean, number one, Roman Reigns called CM Punk old. And they played into that, especially in the end of the match, and I'll get into that. But really, the main story that I got out of this was, number one, two guys that absolutely hate each other, and there were two guys that are polar opposites from one another. Roman Reigns is the established guy. He is the handpicked guy. That is essentially the establishment, or he became the establishment during the pandemic. CM Punk is the guy that was never supposed to be successful, but due to his reality and him being real all the time, he gravitated towards a lot of fans, and that's why he's popular, and that's why he's in the position that he's in. Yes, CM Punk is an indie darling, but at the same time, he's still a big star. Polar opposites from one another, and that's what I got out of this match. This match, everything about this match, in my opinion, was perfect. I have no complaints about this match whatsoever. Both Roman Reigns and CM Punk tore the freaking house down. This match embodies, and I'm going to say this right here and right now, this match embodies everything as to what a WrestleMania main event should be. This is all you need to have a really good main event for a show like WrestleMania. You need two guys who absolutely despise one another. Absolutely despise one another and just want to beat the living crap out of each other. That's all you need. You don't need constant interference. You don't need the bloodline interfering. You don't need the Usos coming in. You don't need, the Undertaker coming in. A lot of these guys coming in during the match when both men and the referee are down. You don't need an Avengers Endgame style ending. All you need is two guys that hate each other and two guys that are just are willing to put it all on the line. And one guy trying to prove the other guy, wrong or right. Like, you just need two guys. You just need two guys that hate each other, and that's it. That's all you need. That's all you need. You don't need to overcomplicate everything. And unfortunately, we live in and look, this has been a problem with wrestling for many years, for decades even. But a lot of promotions tend to they tend to overcomplicate things when they don't need to. They tend to overcomplicate things when they don't need to. This match was a pure example of not overcomplicating everything. This match basically represented it represented the ideology of getting straight to the point. You just need simple storytelling, and that is it. Roman Reigns absolutely hates CM Punk, and that is why he chose CM Punk at WrestleMania and not Cody Rhodes. That's why he chose CM Punk. He chose CM Punk because he absolutely despises CM Punk. CM Punk takes things personal, which led to the Usos being a part of this whole thing, which, by the way, during the build to that match, I loved the inclusion of the Usos. That, especially Jay getting offended that, CM Punk is disrespecting their family. Roman Reigns comes in and saying, "This is my battle." And then just goes off, and then he ends up calling CM Punk old, and that set a flame on CM Punk. And they played into that in the end of the match. What do I mean? CM Punk was about to go for like his final GTS, but in the end, he gives out. His body gives out, which opened the advantage for Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns did his thing, did the spear, Superman punch, whatever he did, only for him to get the 1, 2, 3 and defeat CM Punk for the World Heavyweight title. Roman Reigns is now the World Heavyweight Champion. Roman Reigns, once again, the Tribal Chief, is back on his throne. And honestly, I'm not mad about it. I actually thought CM Punk was going to retain the title because there's a lot of stories about, Roman Reigns' contract being up. Now, granted, I definitely assumed that Roman Reigns was going to re-sign with the WWE. I mean, 100%. But still, Roman Reigns is once again, the World Heavyweight Champion, and he is at the top of his throne. The Tribal Chief is once again a world champion. And I am not mad about it. Now, how is Roman's schedule going to favor now that he is a world champion again? We're going to have to wait and see. One thing I will say, though, his post-match interview during the post-show was off the chain. He clearly proved why he is the man and why he's at the top of his game. And he flat out stated, we're going to put all this part-time stuff to bed, and I'm going to be full-time heading into the summer. So we're essentially going to be seeing Roman Reigns more often now that he is the world champion. And hopefully that's going to be the case. Because honestly, Roman Reigns has proven time and time again, especially ever since he turned heel during the pandemic, man, that he is really at the top of the food chain. He is really the top guy in this business, the top draw in this business. Roman Reigns, at the end of the day, is money. And WWE clearly saw that. Now, I'm not saying CM Punk is not money. CM Punk 100% is money. He is a proven draw, and he's one of the biggest stars in the industry. There's no disputing that. But also, Roman Reigns is one of the biggest stars in the industry as well. This match was amazing. Everything about this match was amazing. It was a knockdown, drag out match. Like, you didn't need crazy spots. You just needed two guys that hated each other and that are just beating the crap out of each other. That's all you needed. For a match like this, that's all you needed for a main event of WrestleMania. That's all you needed. You didn't need interference. You didn't need none of that. You just needed two guys that hated each other, and you needed a clean finish. And we got that clean finish. One thing I will say about this match, and one thing I loved about the match itself, was before CM Punk got gassed, before CM Punk's body gave out after, that attempt of the GTS, I loved that small part in the match where, I believe CM Punk took out his wristband, his wrist tape, and he basically like crumbled it all up, gave it to the referee. The referee turns back, and then in disparity, CM Punk actually low-blowed Roman Reigns. That was great storytelling right there. That was a fantastic storytelling right there. And it ended up costing, CM Punk the world title, essentially. Like, that all led to, like, what happened later on. CM Punk had it in the bag, and then guess what? His body gave up. He couldn't get Roman for the GTS. That was fantastic. Everything about that was really good. Like, you clearly saw, like, both men knew what they were doing. This was the true definition of not only a great WrestleMania main event, but a classic wrestling match. Like, at the end of the day, if there's one word that you can define Roman Reigns and CM Punk, it was a classic. A classic wrestling match. And it will go down, in my opinion, as one of the best WrestleMania main events of all time. And one of the best WrestleMania main events in recent memory. I'm being dead serious. That was Roman Reigns versus CM Punk. Roman Reigns is your new World Heavyweight Champion to close out WrestleMania 42. Overall thoughts on WrestleMania. WrestleMania, not the best WrestleMania of all time. Again, I wouldn't put it in my top 10. I wouldn't even put it in my top 20. I wouldn't even put it in my top 30. Not the best WrestleMania. Night 2 clearly was the better show, but still, not a great WrestleMania. Again, the viewing experience, I already talked about it, was atrocious. But I will say Roman Reigns and CM Punk tore the house down, and they basically changed the narrative of WrestleMania. Like if they didn't have a good match, everybody would have probably viewed this WrestleMania as one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. But the fact that those two men tore the house down, really, it changed a lot of fans' perceptions, especially after Night 2. Now, granted, as a whole, WrestleMania was not the best, but still, the main event definitely, got a lot of people talking. It got a lot of people talking. But overall, WrestleMania was not the best WrestleMania of all time. It definitely did not top 39, and it definitely did not top 40. In terms of, comparing it to 41, basically we were, it was kind of the same thing as of last year. It's just the viewing experience was just way worse this year than it was last year. But that was WrestleMania, guys. WrestleMania 42 is officially in the history books, and we're now on the road to WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia next year. Okay. Continuing on with the WrestleHavoc podcast, man, we were talking about WrestleMania for well over an hour. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Of course, I'm yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays. And now we're going to be moving on to other stories that took place in Las Vegas. Primarily CM Punk incident. Of course, TMZ put out this story, and I'm going to read it to you guys, and they even released a video. They released multiple videos, and the first video that they released, it definitely made CM Punk to look like a piece of crap human being. I'm not going to lie. But you could definitely understand his frustration, but I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. I'm going to read this article by TMZ. Safe to say, CM Punk is no happy camper this morning after going down in flames to Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 42. The WWE star got in an altercation with a fan, delivering a major smackdown to the man's phone. Punk was captured on video just after midnight Monday, getting into it with the fan, who was filming Punk's WWE friend Bayley, while she was hugging his wife in the lobby of the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino on the Vegas Strip. And then they show the footage. They stated this, and I quote, Punk steps right up into the face of the fan before slapping him down with his phone, or slapping down his phone. He did not slap the fan. He slapped his phone. He basically slapped the phone off the hand of the fan. Security promptly jumps in between Punk and the other dude to prevent things from really going airy. Then Punk coldly stares at the man, who is so terrified that he runs off while apologizing profusely. On Sunday night, Punk went toe-to-toe with Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania 42 inside Allegiant Stadium, but he ultimately lost his World Heavyweight title to Reigns after a hard-fought match. Bayley was also a loser at WrestleMania 42, getting beaten by Paige, who made her triumphant return to WWE in a Fatal 4-Way tag team match. By the way, we're told fans harassing wrestlers at their hotels has become an increasing problem with the WWE Universe, and we're now seeing firsthand evidence of it. So that was the first official article that TMZ put out about this whole incident. Then they released another video, and this was basically the video from the perspective of the fan. And I assume this fan sold this video to TMZ, thinking that everybody was gonna come to the aid and come to the defense of this fan. But if anything, this video actually made the fan look terrible, and it actually changed the narrative about the entire situation, because the first video that came out about this whole incident, let's be honest with ourselves, CM Punk did look, horrible. He did not look really good in that instance. But if you look at the video that the fan filmed, clearly you could understand why CM Punk got upset. You can understand why CM Punk got upset. So I'm reading this other article by TMZ. CM Punk dodged a bullet because the guy whose phone was smacked out of his hand by the WWE superstar in the Las Vegas hotel early this morning, he tells TMZ Sports that he's not looking to sue or involve the cops, but he does want something, and it's not money. He wants to hear the words, "I'm sorry." The fan, who wants to remain anonymous, says he understands the 47-year-old wrestling legend wasn't having the greatest weekend after losing to Roman Reigns in the main event of Night 2 at WrestleMania 42. So he's trying to show Punk some grace. "I want an apology," and this is the quote by the fan, by the way. "I want an apology. Shake my hand. I'm not going to sue him or put him in jail," the guy told us. "I just want an apology." It's a big break for Punk. Government name Phil Brooks. Because we've seen celebs arrested for similar situations in the past. Look no further than Conor McGregor in 2019, when the notorious one was busted for smashing a fan's phone outside of Miami nightclub. If you haven't seen the clip, it's pretty wild. WWE superstars Bayley and AJ Lee were chatting in a public area of the MGM Grand shortly after midnight when the fan approached them, phone in hand, saying, "We love you, Bayley." Now, granted, the fan, if you look at the video from the fan's perspective, number one, he was literally invading their personal space, both AJ Lee and Bayley, and he was literally right when Bayley and AJ Lee were like hugging each other, the fan was literally invading their personal space and getting so close to them to the point where Bayley was literally like, "Yo, get out of my face." Like literally, like, leave me alone. So that's where Punk interfered, and he basically smacked the phone out of the hand of the fan. That's exactly what happened. And then she responded, "Go away," while pushing the phone away. A second later, Punk's hand smacks the phone from the fan's hand, sending it careening down to the ground. The wrestler left the area soon after, according to the fan, who says that he was approached by many people who saw the incident go down and wanted to offer support. Will he get his apology? Chances are there will soon be a mea culpa, whatever. Okay. What are my thoughts on this whole situation? Look, this is a very complex topic to talk about because I've seen a lot of different opinions about this whole matter. I've seen a lot of different opinions about this. Some stupid, some reasonable, some 100% in the right. I'm going to try to look at things from all different perspectives. 100% from the first video that we saw that came out about this, Punk definitely looked bad. Like he looked horrible in that instance. But at the same time, Bayley was hugging his wife, AJ Lee. And if you have a girlfriend, if you have a wife, or any other family members that you love, and you see somebody harassing that person, and clearly Bayley and AJ Lee were getting harassed by that fan, of course the husband is going to do something about it. Of course the loved one is going to do something about it, and Punk did something about it. Now, this isn't the first time Punk has had altercations with fans. Keep in mind, he's had altercations with fans for years. Especially in his first run with WWE. In the later portion of his first run with WWE, he's had an incident with fans as well. And it made CM Punk look bad. But at the same time, we also need to take into consideration that a lot of fans, a lot of wrestling fans, act like the fucking paparazzi. Wrestling fans are essentially the wrestling version of the paparazzi. Because let's be honest with ourselves. A lot of these fans do not view these wrestlers as human beings. And unfortunately, it's a sad they don't live in reality. They live in Fantasyland. These fans view these wrestlers as larger than life human beings. And they view them as that. They don't view them as human beings. And it's quite sad, actually. Not only that, this is not the only instance where you had a lot of fans harassing a lot of wrestlers. Especially this past weekend. There were many stories that I've heard. Many videos that I've seen. Many stories that I've heard about wrestlers being harassed by fans in terms of autographs. Like, give me your autograph. Like, you would literally have families wait till 2:00 in the freaking morning at the wrestlers' hotels just to get a freaking autograph. Just to get a freaking autograph from the wrestler. At 2:00 in the morning, you'd have, and this has been going on for years at this point, you would have incidents where fans would literally stick around in the airports for hours just to get an autograph from the wrestler, in which we know 9 times out of 10, these assholes are going to sell it on eBay. They're going to sell that crap on eBay. No, they're not willing to spend the money to actually wait in line like a good human being to get a photo or an autograph by somebody. No, they have to wait in an airport and harass these people. Rey Mysterio is a pure example of this. Rey Mysterio, he knows, like he sees through the BS. He gets molded by a lot of these people all at once. Hey, can you sign this? Can you sign that? Can you sign this? Can you sign that? And Rey Mysterio flat out tells him, like, bro, you're going to be selling that shit on eBay. Like, I'm not stupid. Like, do I think CM Punk could have handled the situation slightly differently? Yes. Yes, I think. But at the same time, if I was in that situation, I probably would have done the same thing as well. I probably would. I'm not advocating for people to do that stuff. I'm not advocating to put your hands on somebody. I'm not advocating that at all. But I'm saying, if you see like a sibling or a loved one that you are with, getting harassed by somebody, obviously you're going to do something about it. Again, this is not the only incident that took place throughout this whole weekend in Las Vegas. I mean, Booker T literally went out and said a fan filmed him in a freaking bathroom. A fan filmed him in a freaking bathroom. What the hell is wrong with people? Cora Jade, Elena Black, a random dude groped her, man. Like we've seen incidents like this for years, but like never to the extent as to what we all saw in Las Vegas, man. It was insane. Stories like this always come out during WrestleMania weekend, but it was at an all-time high this past weekend. Like it was at an all-time high this year. And the only thing that this proved is, number one, wrestling fans are the worst types of people imaginable. And look, I'm a wrestling fan myself, but I consider myself like not a type of person that would sink to that level. Like I'm a fan of wrestling, but I'm a fan of other things. And I try to, when I'm not interested in wrestling, I try to do other things that not only benefit me, but just like these types of fans, like they view wrestling 24/7, 365, and it's just not healthy. And they don't live in reality. Like they have no lives. These fans love harassing talent, man. It's crazy. You got groups of fans with freaking autographs, with like photos and action figure boxes, saying, "Can I get your autograph?" Like literally, like at 4:00 in the morning, while they're freaking exhausted, and they're like, "Bro, can you just leave me alone?" Like, if you want to get an autograph or a photo with the wrestler, go to a meet and greet. You don't have to maul them in a public setting like that. Again, this is not the only incident that took place, man. Elena Black, again, had that incident with that fan, and I saw the video. It was horrible. I feel bad for her. I'm not a fan of hers, but again, I still feel bad for her. No woman should have to deal with crap like that. I'm sorry. No woman should have to deal with crap like that. I'm sorry, man. That's disgusting, man. It's disgusting. Booker T getting, a fan filming Booker T in the bathroom. Like, what is wrong with people, man? I don't understand why fans act so entitled. And this is not just wrestling, man. It's like, have you ever, did you guys ever watch Smile 2? And if you guys know about Smile 2, you know what I'm talking about. That one scene where the celebrity who is the main character of the movie, does these meet and greets with fans, and there's this obsessive fan that is just is just constantly like harassing her, and then he gets taken away by security. Like, those are essentially wrestling fans. Those are wrestling fans. Those are wrestling fans, man. It's scary. It's very scary. Like, remember the Sonya Deville incident where the fan literally like drove miles, and I mean hundreds of miles, and invaded her home? Like, what is wrong with people, yo? Now, I'm not saying like this fan, like, it's bad in this extent. No, but clearly, if you look at the video from the fan's perspective, he was clearly harassing Bayley and AJ Lee. And the audacity that this fan is like, I'm not going to sue. I'm not going to want money from you. I just want an apology. Talk about the entitlement, man. Talk about the entitlement. If you are harassing a wrestler very late in the morning, like around 2 or 3, I don't know what time this took place, but still, like, if you are harassing a female wrestler and a female wrestler says, leave me alone, like, or something like that, like, if she doesn't want to be bothered, don't bother her. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, but WWE wrestlers should know, like, they signed up for this life. Like, they are public figures. Yes, they are public figures. There's no disputing that. They are public figures. I'm not disputing that whatsoever. They are. But they are also human beings. Treat them like human beings. Like, I can vividly remember the video with Tobey Maguire in the car, crashing out in front of all of the paparazzi because they were literally blocking him in the fucking driveway. And he was screaming at them, I can't see. There are cars there. You'd have the idiots in Hollywood saying, oh, he was disrespectful to the paparazzi. No, yeah, I would be disrespectful to them too. I'd be disrespectful. I don't care if they're working for somebody. Don't harass me, man. Don't harass me, man. I'd slap the paparazzi as well. I'd go scorched earth. I don't care if that gives me bad press. Leave me the fuck alone. Wrestling fans are like the paparazzi. It's a joke. It's a joke. And the fact that this fan is demanding an apology, like, talk about entitlement and talk about loser mentality. That guy's a loser. A loser. This guy is a loser. Do not be like this guy, please. Wrestling fans are the worst types of fans, like, imaginable. They love embarrassing themselves and they don't even know it. They love embarrassing themselves and they're like any other politician out there. It's so funny. They're like politicians, bro. They embarrass themselves, but they don't even know it. They're like the paparazzi. They embarrass themselves, but don't even know it. Don't be like these people. Do not be like these people. Also, another tip for wrestling fans, get good hygiene, please. Have good hygiene. Put some deodorant on, man. I've been to many different wrestling shows, and let me tell you, some of the wrestling shows I've been in, man, some people do not even wear deodorant, and they smell so bad. Oh my God. It's disgusting. These people are disgusting, man. Like, it's a joke, man. Wrestling fans are a disgrace. I'm a wrestling fan myself, but trust me, I ain't like this. I ain't like this at all. These people love embarrassing themselves. Moving on, ESPN. Let's talk about ESPN. WWE denies WrestleMania 42 credential to ESPN Andreas Hale. I'm reading this from Post Wrestling's website. ESPN Combat Sports reporter Andreas Hale announced on Saturday that WWE has denied his media credential for WrestleMania 42 in Las Vegas, barring him from covering the company's flagship event for its own broadcast partner. He stated this on X, and I quote, "I will not be covering WrestleMania for ESPN. WWE denied my credentials and blocked my access. Neither I nor ESPN have been told why. Speculate on the reasons, but if you want answers, ask WWE." The development comes 7 months after Hale drew widespread attention for his grading for the company's first PLE on ESPN Unlimited, a C in his editorial review. He has also reported on the Janelle Grant lawsuit. Post Wrestling previously reported in March that ESPN stopped using letter grades in its WWE PLE reviews after objections from WWE, even as Hale's UFC reviews continued to use the same grading format. In addition to the PLE reviews, Hale has covered the Janelle Grant lawsuit against WWE and Vince McMahon for ESPN's digital platform. He reported on the suit when it was first filed in January of 2024 and published a follow-up on April 2nd, noting that WWE did not respond to his outreach for comment on that story. At the time of the publication, WWE did not respond to requests for comment from Post Wrestling. ESPN declined to comment. In the U.S., WrestleMania 42 is streaming on ESPN Unlimited as part of a 5-year, $1.6 billion media rights deal that began last summer. The first hour of Saturday's card will also air on ESPN2, with Sunday's first hour airing on ESPN's main channel. Hale's credential denial means that WWE primary broadcast partner will not have its lead digital wrestling reporter on site for its biggest event of the year. Hale joined ESPN in 2024 as a combat sports reporter covering boxing, MMA, and professional wrestling. He brought more than 20 years of experience as a journalist with previous stints in the Sporting News, DAZN, SureDog, and The Ring, among other outlets. He is also a regular host on Sirius XM's Fight Nation. When WWE's deal with ESPN Unlimited launched last December, Hale reviewed the inaugural PLE, WrestlePalooza, assigning it an overall grade of a C. His review praised the Stephanie Vaquer versus Io Sky match, but found the rest of the card underwhelming, including the Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre main event and Brock Lesnar's one-sided victory over John Cena. Hale defended the review publicly, telling Jonathan Coachman's Off the Ropes Sirius XM show, "I gave it a C and it deserved a C. The bigger issue is that if we can't be honest about how the show really is, then my journalistic credibility is at risk. My grades mean something." Hale went on to review the October Crown Jewel PLE, grading it a B. After that, the letter grades disappeared from his WWE reviews entirely through his UFC reviews, including his as recently as UFC 327 last week, have continued to use the format without interruption. As Post Wrestling reported on March 10th, multiple sources familiar with the matter confirmed that ESPN removed the letter grades from its WWE reviews after WWE raised objections. An ESPN source maintained at the time the decision was ESPN's alone, but declined to explain the reasoning or address whether WWE had taken issue with the grades. WWE did not respond to Post Wrestling's inquiries for that story either. On the September 2025 media call, ESPN Senior Vice President John Lasker was asked whether the network's reporters would maintain full independence in covering WWE. His answer was apathetic. "I think the answer to that is an apathetic yes." Then Vice President of Programming and Acquisitions Mike Kenny, who later moved to CBS Sports, agreed, calling it an unequivocal yes and invoking the principle of separation of church and state. WWE talent had been widely featured on ESPN's television platforms in the lead up to WrestleMania, including appearances on shows as Get Up and First Take. Those appearances, however, are largely promotional in nature and distinct from the journalistic access that ESPN digital editorial staff would typically use for original reporting and interviews. One day before Hale's announcement, he contributed to ESPN.com WrestleMania 42 Roundtable article alongside colleagues Mark Raimondi, Sak Chandan, Juliana Daddio, and Joe Fordenbeg. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry that I mispronounced those names. Offering predictions and analysis for the event. Post Wrestling will update readers if substantive comment is received from WWE or ESPN. Okay, so basically they denied Andreas Hale's credentials for WrestleMania. And really the only reason as to why they denied his credential access is because of the fact that he gave WrestlePalooza a grade letter C. He literally gave them a C grade. And I'm going to say this right here and right now. I genuinely, and look, this is my personal opinion. I think like the wrestling media in general is kind of a joke. As much as I like Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, sometimes he fights people and he doesn't really have to. Dave Meltzer tends to take the bait with a lot of people. I don't know why. Even though I like Dave, he's been getting things wrong, but I still like Dave. I mean, at the end of the day, wrestling media in a way is kind of a joke. Andreas Hale is an actual like journalist. Like he's a real journalist that works for ESPN, and he not only covers pro wrestling, he also covers boxing and he also covers MMA. And his letter grade for WrestlePalooza, which, by the way, was not the best show whatsoever. It was actually a very disappointing show. The match between Brock Lesnar and John Cena was not great at all. He gave that show a C, and WWE got triggered by it. And eventually they were like, you know what? We're not going to have this guy, give us grades that make us look bad. So what does that mean? WWE is essentially telling that journalist, hey, you cannot criticize us. You cannot criticize. This was strictly a WWE decision. I don't think it was really an ESPN decision. This was a WWE decision. And it's kind of a joke, honestly. Like they are afraid of criticism. It's kind of like, in a way, sometimes AEW as well. AEW sometimes is afraid of criticism as well. I don't know what's up with these promoters that are afraid of criticism, but at the end of the day, with people like an Andreas Hale, who is literally giving his own opinion on the product and is literally telling it as it is. The fact that WWE denied him credentials simply based off of that goes to show you what WWE really thinks about, again, the journalists and, the average consumer. And look, I understand, if you have a vendetta against the media, look, at the end of the day, media nowadays, journalism nowadays, is kind of a joke. If you look at what's going on, in the world right now, if you look at these media companies, you see, people swing one way and don't even give the full story. It's a joke nowadays. It really is a joke. It really is a joke. But at the same time, denying credentials for somebody just because they gave you a C grade clearly shows the pettiness of a company like World Wrestling Entertainment. It's crazy. It's really crazy. And honestly, it's kind of laughable if you really think about it. And you see a lot of fans on the internet. He's an AEW fan. That's why you shouldn't criticize WWE when you're an AEW. I'm looking at these people and I'm like, you are the same people that talk about tribalism and tribalism is bad, yet you celebrate when situations like this happen. And then you get all tribalistic about it. It makes no sense whatsoever. These fans are not fans whatsoever. They're not fans whatsoever. I think what happened to him is unfortunately a travesty, and it kind of sucks, but what can you do, man? It's WWE. They got their own tactics of how they run their business, and they constantly say we don't care, just watch the show, watch the show. You're complaining, just watch the show. I mean, and then they do stuff like this. I mean, clearly they don't give a crap about you. They don't care about you whatsoever. But that's my take on the whole Andreas Hale incident that went down. Mark Shapiro claims that TKO has full creative control over World Wrestling Entertainment. I'm reading this from Wrestling Inc.'s website. Mark Shapiro clarified that TKO had total control over WWE creative while answering criticism of celebrity involvement on the road to WrestleMania 42. Shapiro, TKO's COO, visited the University of Alabama ahead of the show of shows last weekend, during which he was asked by one student about the reception of TKO's perceived involvement in creative. The likes of Pat McAfee, Jelly Roll, Ishel Speed, and influencer turned WWE superstar Logan Paul so involved with the build to and then eventually the event. The interaction was recorded and posted on Reddit by user South/Permission5342, which is a stupid name, by the way, but whatever. He stated this, and I quote, "First of all, TKO has complete control, so we're responsible," Shapiro clarified, continuing to defend the product that has been distributed thus far. "What I will tell you is that WWE is growing every way," and it really exploded. As far as the stars part of it, I don't think that's true. Shapiro pointed out the trajectory of The Rock from WWE into Hollywood and justified that stars moving the other way is not new to the industry. It's just being done on a grander scale. Having Hollywood tie-ins and celebs and stars Logan Paul and Pat McAfee and Mark Wahlberg shows up and he does his thing, and Tyrese Haliburton, that's not new. It's just on a larger stage. We're spending a lot more money to market the brand, market the content. And when you do that, you're going to win some folks over, but you're also going to chase some folks away. Wahlberg was conspicuous considering the fact that he is a name to have been involved in anything recent with WWE. His last significant role saw him open WrestleMania 38 as the most stupendous two-night WrestleMania in history. Okay, basically, Mark Shapiro essentially states that like TKO basically has like full like they have full reins over the WWE product. In my opinion, listen, at the end, look, Triple H is running the creative ends, and I think he is running the creative ends. But at the same time, he also has a company to answer to. And from what we have seen with, the Pat McAfee stuff, clearly that was not a Paul Levesque decision. That was clearly, in my opinion, clearly a TKO decision. It was a Mark Shapiro decision. It was an Ari Emanuel decision. If you don't believe that, you are lying to yourself. Now, in terms of the celebrity involvement, on one hand, I could understand Mark Shapiro's, stance on the whole celebrity involvement, and he's clearly defending it. What is my take on the whole celebrity involvement? Look, I understand as to why WWE has a bunch of influencers and social media, I understand why they have social media influencers, and I understand why they got celebrities and stuff. Like, they want to, market the brand of WWE, because at the end of the day, that's what matters the most, marketing the brand of WWE. Again, this is a business, and that's what fans need to understand. This is a business, and TKO has their own motives of how to run that business. And to be fair, they have been successful at it. That being said, in terms of all of the celebrity involvement, WWE has always had a history of using celebrities, dating back to the 1980s with the Rock and Wrestling Connection, Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, WrestleMania 3, Alice Cooper. They had a lot of celebrity involvement, in the 90s as well with Mike Tyson. WrestleMania 14, they had a lot of celebrity involvement. But the problem is now is the fact that WWE essentially is leaning too much on that celebrity involvement. Back then, whenever WWE would involve celebrities, they would kind of be a part, they'd have a small role on the show. Nowadays, you see a celebrity almost every week. It's kind of like a steroid version of the guest host era of Raw. You guys remember the guest host era of Raw? It's kind of that, but on steroids. WWE, I think, is leaning too much on the celebrities and the influencers over their own talent. Case in point, Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. The feud went from being Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton to Jelly Roll versus Pat McAfee. And it's going to essentially be like that later on. That's how it's going to be. It went from being Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton to Cody Rhodes versus Pat McAfee. Stuff like when Randy and Cody have a built-in story and you're throwing that away in favor of celebrity involvement, clearly, in my opinion, from a creative standpoint, you are doing something wrong. Now, granted, it's not going to affect their business in any way, shape, or form, because they're still going to do gangbuster numbers. They're still going to, do record gates. They're still going to have record profits. It's not going to affect them from a creative standpoint. People need to understand now, the business has changed, across all aspects of professional wrestling, across both promotions, WWE and AEW. You cannot, nowadays, these promotions do not have to sell tickets to be successful. A lot of these promotions, a lot of these companies, primarily WWE, companies like WWE, rely heavily on media and content and distribution. They get guaranteed money from distribution. The business has changed. And that's what people need to understand. Do we agree? Do I agree with the fact that WWE using influencers, and celebrities improves the product? No, I don't agree with it. I think if anything, it's wrong, because I think you should market your talent more than, you should with celebrities on WWE. But at the same time, I understand why they do it. My problem is the fact that they overdo it. They overdo it like they overdo everything. It's like with the sponsors, there's nothing wrong with having sponsors on your show, but when you're a company that is making billions of dollars across two huge brands in the WWE and the UFC, you really don't have to do what you are doing. You are making that money regardless. Oh, but it's a cost-cutting measure. Well, it's a cost-cutting measure, but at the same time, you're making all this money regardless. So really, what are you cutting? What cost are you essentially cutting? You sound greedy at that point. You know what I'm saying? I know everybody uses the term greedy. They use the term greed, but it's true. They are greedy people. They like making money out of the expense of the consumer. And that's where my problem lies. There's nothing wrong with making money. Their number one priority should be making money. Mark Shapiro, at the end of the day, in my opinion, is not really a wrestling fan.
His job is not focusing on the creative aspect of WWE. His job is to see how much money these companies can make. Because eventually, what I think is going to be happening is I think TKO is eventually going to sell WWE off. That's what I think is going to happen. They are going to sell WWE off. Maybe the UFC as well. They're probably going to sell it all as one package. Most likely, they're probably going to sell it to the people at Saudi Arabia. Most likely, they're going to be selling it to people like Turkey al-Sheikh and the people in Saudi Arabia because they have an unlimited budget. They're willing to spend the money. They're willing to overspend like crazy. They're going to sell this product off. They are. They don't view it for the love of the game. They view it for they're venture capitalists. And look, there's nothing wrong with being a venture capitalist, in my opinion. I'm a capitalist myself. But at the same time, again, these are people that just view it for the dollars and cents and don't view it for the product aspect, for the culture aspect of it. And really, that's kind of a problem, in my opinion. But that's how it is nowadays, unfortunately. That's how it is. All right, moving on. Darby Allin. Darby Allin is the new AEW World Champion. If you guys do not know, Darby Allin defeated MJF this past Wednesday on Dynamite, and it sparked a lot of conversation on social media. And I actually made a video on the WrestleHavoc channel about this, and I was very vocal about this whole thing. And I talked about it on last week's show about why it was not the right decision to take the belt off of Max, and why I think it's wrong for AEW to do something like that. Well, going into Dynamite on Wednesday, clearly AEW had their plan set in stone, and they were willing to put the belt on Darby Allin. Now, of course, how did we get here? Of course, MJF defeated Kenny Omega at Dynasty and retained his AEW World title in a fantastic match. And Darby Allin defeated Andrade in a number one contenders match, and AEW immediately announced the match, I believe, right after the press conference, and we were getting a title match between Darby Allin and MJF. Now, one thing I will say is that I love how they played into the fact that MJF did not know until the start of the show that he had a title match. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Now, again, I was very vocal about MJF losing his title. I don't think, even now, I don't think it's still the right move. But I try to look at both perspectives of everything. And one thing I will say is, from the moment Sting came out and he essentially cheered Darby up, I was like, oh yeah, they're going to put the belt on Darby Allin. They're going to put the belt on Darby Allin. Now, I'm going to say this right here and right now. I think Darby Allin deserves to be world champion. I think he deserves to be world champion. He's, it's about damn time that he won the world title. I think it's a little bit too late, but still, he won the world title. The way he won it, though, I'm kind of iffy about because he squashed MJF. He did. He squashed MJF. And, the way he did it was, of course, MJF tried to cheat. He hits him with a low blow. Later on in the match, Darby Allin hits the low blow on MJF. And then he goes for the Scorpion Death Drop and then goes for 4 coffin drops. And then goes for the side headlock takeover. And then he gets the win and beats MJF. Now, you could definitely see like the story that they were trying to tell with MJF essentially underestimating somebody like Darby Allin, because MJF is somebody who pinned Darby Allin twice with a headlock takeover. And the whole aspect of the headlock takeover was something not only dating back to like the first few years of AEW, but it was something dating back to the days when they were in the indies. And they really focused heavily on the headlock takeover aspect. So I like how they brought that in. But at the same time, it was still an instance where Darby Allin squashed the world champion MJF. And this is the second time this year where MJF got squashed. First by Brody King and then by Darby Allin. So that's really where my problem lies. Not only that, MJF was literally doing the best work of his career, and he's literally the only true star. Now, I'm not saying that there are other stars. I'm not saying that the top people in the main event scene are not stars, but they are not stars at the caliber of an MJF, and you're willing to take the belt off of your top star, who essentially is the main reason as to why AEW is getting a lot of attention now, to somebody like Darby Allin, who, by the way, deserves to be a world champion. But again, with him winning the title, you know damn well he's not going to hold on to the title for a long period of time. He's essentially going to be a transitional champion. And that's what I hate, because I don't view Darby Allin as somebody who's a transitional champion. I view Darby Allin as a true main event player. And I talked about this in my recent video on the main WrestleHavoc channel. The link will be in the description below. But I talked about the fact that if AEW knows that Darby Allin's going to have a short title reign, they need to book Darby Allin as strong as possible in those 6 weeks. If he's going to drop the title, for example, at Double or Nothing in New York, they got to book Darby Allin as strongly as possible as the world champion. Make him a lot of people view MJF as the face of AEW. A lot of people view Darby Allin as like really the true spirit of AEW, kind of like what Sting was to WCW. Book him like that. Book him like that. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if I could trust the creative process in order for AEW to really book him like that. But again, I'm still very skeptical about it. I'm happy for Darby Allin. I think he deserves it. But 9 times out of 10, I know for a fact that Darby Allin's eventually going to be a transitional champion, because he's not going to hold on to the title for long. This was like the pure equivalent of Lex Luger winning the WCW title in 97, or, Mankind winning the WWF title in January of 99. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of Darby winning, look, I'm happy for him, but now I'm still not, sure that this was the right move. But one thing I will say, it did take balls from Tony Khan. And, Tony Khan, instead of listening to other people, he really trusted his instincts and was like, you know what? I think I'm going to put the belt on Darby Allin. I don't care what anybody says, but we'll see. We'll see in a month's time where Darby Allin lies on the totem pole in AEW as the world champion. And we're going to have to wait and see what AEW does. But again, I'm not a fan of this move from a creative standpoint. Again, I like Darby Allin, but I'm not a fan of this move because, again, MJF is literally the true draw that AEW has. And look, their ratings have been going up. Attendance is going up because of guys like MJF. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that Darby Allin is not a star. He's just not the caliber of a star of an MJF. And I don't think AEW is really going to have another star like an MJF. I may be totally wrong in a month, but we're going to have to wait and see. Those are my thoughts on Darby Allin winning the world title. And in our last topic, AEW apparently has a new pay-per-view. And that new pay-per-view is called AEW Redemption. And apparently it's going to be setting in between, I believe, Forbidden Door and Double or Nothing. I'm reading this online, and this article stated this, and I quote, AEW could be gearing up to introduce a brand new pay-per-view in 2026. During the recent episode of the Matman Podcast, Andrew Zarian shared that a recent filed trademark called AEW Redemption is expected to be used for the promotion's next pay-per-view edition. While an official date or location has not been confirmed, there's already speculation about where it could land on the calendar. Looking at AEW's current schedule, Double or Nothing is locked in for May. Forbidden Door takes place in June, and All In is set for August. That leaves July as the most logical spot for the new event to be introduced. So I was totally wrong. Forbidden Door takes place in June because last year Forbidden Door took place in August, but this year Forbidden Door is back in its normal month in June. Of course, Double or Nothing takes place in May. That leaves a spot for July. July is the most logical spot for a new event to be introduced. Interestingly, AEW has avoided running shows in either June or July over the past 2 years, making this a notable shift in its plans to move forward. There's always a chance that Redemption could replace an existing pay-per-view such as All Out, Wrestle Dream, Full Gear, or World's End, but that scenario is not considered likely at this stage. If the new event does materialize, it would mark a milestone for AEW, bringing their annual pay-per-view total to 10 for the first time in the company's history. So yeah, AEW looks to be having a new pay-per-view. I'm not against it. Again, this was expected. Look, as you grow your brand, I mean, you're eventually going to, grow your pay-per-view model, and you're going to increase the number of pay-per-views that you have. Like, I can remember the first few years of AEW, they only had 4 pay-per-views per year. Then we went to 8 pay-per-views a year. Now we're at the point where we're almost, having a monthly pay-per-view schedule for AEW. And honestly, at this point, AEW is at that level where they are able to expand. So yeah, that is AEW and their new pay-per-view redemption. But that was the WrestleHavoc podcast on this Wednesday, April 22nd, 2024. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the show. And as always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. I've been looking out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel or on the WrestleHavoc podcast channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Rays, signing out. I'll see you guys all next week. Peace.